There are countless discussions about how the personal relationship between Putin and Trump is deepening. And I find this topic incredibly significant because their relationship can only be described as love. And since neither of them is young, their passion has a particularly romantic and even somewhat touching character. For example, Putin gifted Trump a portrait of him, painted by Nikos Safronov. Safronov himself has yet to confirm authorship, but many believe the painting is clearly his work. The artist Nikos Safronov told Argumenty Fact that the portrait is an invaluable work of art. He added somewhat coquettishly that in artistic circles, it is not customary to comment on works whose authorship remains unknown. As for the potential value of the painting, Safronov suggested that such a piece is likely priceless. And so, Putin entrusted the delivery of this priceless gift to Trump's close friend, Steve Witkoff. According to Witkoff, Trump was deeply moved by the present. Witkoff also shared his impressions of his meeting with Putin alongside another remarkable figure, Tucker Carlson. Together, they spent over an hour and a half enthusiastically praising Putin, presenting exclusively the Kremlin version of Ukraine history, the causes of the ongoing war, and the situation on the front lines. In other words, they spent an hour and a half lying. Perhaps the most striking aspect of Witkoff's statement, though I understand some might find such a detailed recounting of his falsehoods excessive, is that this propaganda is being fed to an American audience. This is how Trump's allies and supporters are polluting the minds of Americans. I believe this is an important issue because it ultimately shapes public opinion. Now, perhaps the most egregious of Witkoff's lies were his comments about so-called referendums held in the occupied regions of Ukraine. He said something like this: first of all, I think the elephant of the room is these so-called four regions, Donbass, Crimea, well, you know the names. It was clear that Witkoff did not actually remember the names of these regions. Tucker Carlson had to help him out. Lugansk, Carlson prompted. Yes, Lugansk, Witkoff agreed. He clearly couldn't recall the names of the other two regions, only noting that they were Russian-speaking. Witkoff continued. There were referendums where the overwhelming majority of people said they wanted to be under Russian control. Tucker Carlson. Yes, Steve Witkoff, I think this is the key issue of the conflict. This should be the very first thing to be resolved, and we are having very, very positive discussions, and Russia controls these territories. Tucker Carlson. In fact, from Russian perspective, some of these territories are now officially part of Russia, correct? Steve Witkoff. Yes, that's correct, but really, it has always been that way. I won't get into a broader discussion of these slides just yet. We will discuss them separately, but for now, let's congratulate these two fine gentlemen, Carlson and Witkoff, on their relentless dishonesty. Nearly every statement Witkoff made in this conversation was false. Let's break it down specifically. First, Russia does not claim just 4 Ukrainian regions, but 5: Crimea, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, Lugansk and Kherson. Second, they claim that the spread of the Russian language in particular region indicates a desire to join Russia or a pro-Russian sentiment is false. For example, in the last Ukrainian parliamentary election held in 2019, the pro-Russian party OPZZ received only about 80 to 20% of the vote in Kherson and Zaporizhia regions, far from the majority. The party had similar support levels in Kharkiv and Odessa regions, both of which also have large Russian-speaking population. In other words, speaking Russian does not automatically mean supporting Russia or wanting to be part of Russia. And I mean, those two guys were speaking English. If then it means that does it mean that United Kingdom have the claim of United States? Because, I mean, they are speaking English. Doesn't they? Don't they? Third, statistical data contradict Witkoff and Carlson claims that the majority of Russian-speaking people in this there is a majority Russian-speaking people in these regions. The most recent Ukrainian census conducted in 2001 showed that only about 25% of Kherson population identified Russian as their native language, while in Zaporizhia the figure was 49%. Yes, in Donetsk and Crimea it was 75% and in Lugansk 69%. But this means that two of the regions Russia seek to occupy, Kherson and Zaporizhia, were never predominantly Russian-speaking. And again, speaking Russian doesn't mean that they wanted to be part of Russia. Another major lie concerns the so-called referendums. The overwhelming majority of countries and international organizations do not recognize these referendums as legitimate because all voting took place after the regions have already been occupied by Russian forces. Russia's methods of staging these referendums are well documented. For example, in Zaporizhia, they held this referendum, but the main population center, the town of Zaporizhia, the city of Zaporizhia, the huge city of approximately 700,000 people, was never under Russian occupation. So they never took part of in this referendum. But because because Russians took part of Zaporizhia Oblast and staged a false referendum, then they claim that these people, 700 people in Zaporizhia who never took any part of this referendum, are now also theirs, that Zaporizhia should also be included in the. So all this is just pretext and nothing but lies. And lastly, the claim that Russia controls all 5 of these regions is false. Yes, Crimea remains under Russian control. However, a significant portion of Donetsk region is still controlled by Ukraine, not to mention that Kherson and Zaporizhia, the cities of Kherson and Zaporizhia, the oblast centers, are entirely under the control of Ukrainian armed forces. Then there was another wave of lies. It is just some kind of infection that seems to befall foreigners after speaking with Putin. Every foreigner who has had the misfortune of talking to Putin is inevitably subjected to a massive barrage of information about Russian and Ukrainian history. Putin tells them about Bogdan Khmelnytsky's charter, always mentions the Pecheneks and then the Polovtsy, and of course present all these details in a very peculiar way that has nothing to do with actual history. And in the conversation between Witkoff and Carlson, the traces of this viral attack of Putin's historical knowledge surfaced in full force. For example, Witkoff went on at length about Khrushchev's role in shaping Ukraine. I highly doubt that before meeting with Putin, this esteemed real estate developer even knew Khrushchev's name. But now he does. He has acquired this important information and shared the following. Steve Witkoff: I think we need to establish all the facts clearly, understand that the actual conditions, what the actual conditions are in Russia. The situation is complex, and for Ukraine, this is a difficult conflict. They have been at war with each other since World War II. Since World War II, we were at war with each other. There is feeling that Ukraine is fake country, and they just piece together some kind of mosaic. This region, in my opinion, are the root cause of this war. Russia has considered these 5 regions its own since World War II. Why World War II is even relevant here is unclear, and according to Witkoff, no one wants to talk about this, but he does very clearly, as he says. And Russian television, meanwhile, rants about this nearly every 5 minutes, 24/7. Then Witkoff continues: how can it be resolved all this if we don't address the main issue at the head of this conflict? At this point, Tucker Carlson decided to show off his knowledge. Tucker Carlson: Khrushchev basically made them part of Ukraine. Steve Witkoff: right. Tucker Carlson. Yeah, Khrushchev, I think, was Ukrainian. So, absolutely astonishing. Truly remarkable. Nikita Sergeyevich Khrushchev was typical ethnic Russian, born in the Kursk region. But fine, that's a separate issue. So let's congratulate Witkoff and Carlson. Yet again, I've lost count on their continued lying streak. First of all, anyone who grew in Soviet Union knows perfectly well that Khrushchev had absolutely nothing to do with the territorial affiliation of Donetsk, Lugansk, Zaporizhia or Kherson. These regions were part of Soviet Ukraine from the moment it was established in 1919. Of course, one could understand that American journalists and real estate developer aren't required to know the history of the USSR, Ukrainian SSR or RSFSR, but and nor they are expected to be familiar with Khrushchev's biography. But the issue here is that they have been infected by Putin and now they are broadcasting these falsehoods to the entire world. Another falsehood, one that is quite widespread, is the claim that Khrushchev played some key role in transferring Crimea to Ukraine. In reality, the decision to transfer Crimea to Ukrainian SSSR was made in 1954. When Khrushchev was already first secretary of the Communist Party of Soviet Union Central Committee. However, this decision was made by the Presidium of Supreme Soviet and Khrushchev's signature was not on it. He played no decisive role in the process. And as an aside, I would like to say that it is very convenient to divide this history like there was Stalin, then he died, there was Khrushchev, and then there was Brezhnev. But it's not. It wasn't like that. After the death of Stalin, there was a period from 53 to 57. Then there wasn't a sole ruler of Soviet Union. There was always some kind of several people were making decisions. For example, after the death of Stalin, those people were Khrushchev, Malenkov, Bulganin, and Beria. And Beria was the chief one, the most powerful one. Then the other three just allied and got rid of Beria. And at the period in 54, when we are speaking about, when the Ukrainian SSR was received the Crimea from Russian Federation, it was Malenkov who was the head of the party and only the head of the most powerful figure in this alliance. So it was his decision. It was Malenkov's decision, and Khrushchev became sole head of Soviet Union only after he dealt with Zhukov, who came to power after the death of Beria, and he wanted to be the first figure. The Zhukov and his army wanted to be the head of Soviet Union, but Khrushchev went on top on this conflict. He forced Zhukov to retire, but it only happened in 1957, 3 years after the Crimea was already in Ukraine, was added to Ukraine. So Khrushchev has nothing to do with this. The transfer of Crimea from RSFSR to Ukraine SSR was carried out through a decree of the Presidium of Supreme Soviet. This was done following a session of the Communist Party of Soviet Union Presidium chaired by Malenkov, a name that actually mattered in this decision. So, to be precise, the key figures in these decisions were Malenkov, who presided over the Presidium session, and Kliment Voroshilov, chairman of the Presidium of Supreme Soviet, who signed all the official documents. Khrushchev has no role in this at all. Another lie, which is by now is at least the third one, is the claim that Khrushchev was Ukrainian. He was born in Kursk region, his parents were Russians, and the fact that he spent some time working in Ukraine is irrelevant. He was the chief communist in Ukraine before the World War II and sometime after, I think. He was heading the Communist Party of Ukraine, but he wasn't Ukrainian. He was just heading this region. It does not make him Ukrainian in any ethnic, cultural, or historical sense. After completing his mission of poisoning American minds with falsehoods about Ukrainian history, Trump's special envoy then declared that Putin has no intention of claiming any additional Ukrainian regions beyond the 5 already included in Russian constitution. Here's what he said. Tucker Carlson, do you think the Russians want to march through Europe? Steve Witkoff, no. Tucker Carlson, why would they want? They need that. I wouldn't want this country, so why would they? So flawless logic. Truly, if Tucker Carlson wouldn't want them, then obviously Putin doesn't either. Then Witkoff continues. First of all, why would they want to take over all of Ukraine? For what specific purpose? They don't need to take over Ukraine, claims Witkoff. That would be like occupying Gaza. Do the Israelis really want to occupy Gaza forever? No, they don't. They just want stability. But the Russians already have what they want, what they need. They got back those 5 regions. And you see the phrasing, got back as if they were theirs in the first place. They were not theirs. They were part of Ukraine. So once again, we see the reinforcement of falsehoods. Russia got back these 5 regions. They have Crimea. They got what they wanted. Why would they need more? Let's congratulate these 2 liars yet again, because of course, you remember that before the invasion, Russian officials repeatedly claimed that they had no plans to attack. Putin himself lied incessantly, saying he had no intention of occupying Ukraine. But in reality, senior Russian politicians, including Medvedev, have continuously spoken about the need to annex more Ukrainian regions, including Kharkiv and Odessa. And that not even mentioning Russian state television, which openly and frequently discusses the necessity of occupying all of Ukraine, not just Ukraine, but much more beyond that. And you remember there was this meeting with industrialists and business owners just before the Trump call to Putin, and when Trump was mocking that he's not in a hurry to receive a call from, not Trump, Putin was laughing with, shocking with some of his minions that he, about, this upcoming phone call, and that he was making Trump wait. There was a closed portion of this event, and in this closed portion, Putin said that they have to agree right now. If they agree right now, I will not claim Odessa, he said. This is idiotic because he has no means to take Odessa. He has no means to take anything more than some villages from Ukraine. There is absolutely no way he can, it's impossible to take. But he then asked the guy, some journalist who was present there, this pocket journalist, to leak this information. And now this idiot Witkoff just repeating it as a gospel. There is in fact plenty of evidence that Putin's ultimate goal is to take control of what he calls Novorossiya, which includes about half of Ukraine, including Odessa, Mykolaiv, and beyond. Unlike these 2 friends of Trump, Europe fully understands that there is a real threat. In particular, European leaders have stated that after Ukraine, other European states could very well be the next target. Baltic states for sure will be next targets, especially when Trump is openly hinting that if there will be such an invasion, then United States will not uphold this Article 5 of this agreement, of NATO agreement. It is openly hinted that the United States will refrain from interfering into European affairs. Okay, so as soon as the Russian will be able to free some forces after the war in Ukraine is somehow frozen, there will be, or if Ukraine will be sold out to Putin, they will attack Baltic states, or will probe to attack, or will to show that NATO is dead. Since we have already started analyzing all these lies, I can't help but address the lies regarding the situation on the front lines, specifically about the so-called encirclement of Ukrainian troops near Kursk. Witkoff repeatedly echoed the Kremlin falsehoods, claiming that Ukrainian forces were allegedly surrounded in the Kursk region. Here's what he said. There are conditions that Russia needs for a final ceasefire, because a final ceasefire is complicated. There is Kursk, where Ukrainian troops are surrounded. At this point, Tucker Carlson decided to show off his erudition and pointed out, Kursk is Russia. Steve Witkoff confirmed. Yes, Kursk is indeed in Russia. The Russians reclaimed it. Well, I won't nitpick, but Kursk was never captured by Ukraine, nor was it their goal to do so. Some parts of the Kursk regions were indeed briefly entered by Ukrainian forces, but in Witkoff understanding, it seems that Ukraine occupied Kursk and then Russia won it back. So it's either idiocy or blatant lie. And then Witkoff continued. They have people trapped there. President Trump doesn't want everybody to be killed. This is an important battlefield issue that needs to be resolved. Honestly, I'm getting tired of congratulating these two professional liars for deceiving people yet again. The claim about the encirclement of Ukrainian troops in the Kursk region has been repeated multiple times by both Putin and Trump. Trump even reportedly asked Putin to spare the Ukrainian soldiers and not kill them. Putin, as usual, started making excuses, saying they had committed crimes. In reality, there is no encirclement of Ukrainian forces in Kursk region. This has been confirmed multiple times, not only by Ukrainian sources, but also by the CIA and several US intelligence agencies. These agencies even shared their findings with the White House. But as always, Trump does not trust his own intelligence services. He only believes Putin. Putin, for his part, stated that Ukrainian troops in the Kursk region had only two options, either surrender or die. This falsehood was then repeated by Trump as well. And finally, the most important part, the talk about love, about how Putin prayed for Trump and gave him a portrait. Here's what Witkoff said. During my second visit to Russia, everything became very personal. President Putin commissioned a beautiful portrait of President Trump from a leading Russian artist, handed it to me and asked me to bring it to President Trump, which I did. I delivered it to him. This was even reported in the newspapers. It was a touching moment. And then Witkoff continued. Putin told me that when there was an attempt on President Trump's life, he went to his local church, met with the priest and prayed for Trump. This church was his fellow KGB guy. Not because he was the president of the United States or could become one, but because he has a friendship with him. He prayed for his friend. Do you understand what I'm saying? Can you even imagine sitting there and listening to such conversation? I came home, delivered the message to our president and gave him the painting, and he was clearly moved by it. This whole thing sounds like some, the recounting of the life of some medieval saint. Witkoff then added, this kind of connection was re-established through a simple word called communication. Some might say I shouldn't have had this communication because Putin is a bad guy. I don't consider Putin a bad guy. The situation is complicated, and so is the war and everything that is led to it. The situation is very clear. Putin is military criminal. and he attacked the country. He is the head of an aggressive state that has nothing to do in Ukraine, and he can end Ukraine, this war in Ukraine, anytime. He just should take his troops and go the fuck home, and that's all. We are not going to catch them to go. We are not going to invade Russia. We just should reestablish our internationally recognized borders, and that's all. So, and this situation sums up this hour and a half long interview. And as if that was not enough, Witkoff also gave an interview to Fox News, which aired the next day. I will not even comment on it. I just highlight that one key takeaway from what Witkoff said. I feel that Putin, wants peace. Do you understand? He feels that Putin wants peace. This is probably the essence of this entire interview that was aired on Fox News. So, summing up what was going on. The interview with Steve Witkoff and Tucker Carlson was filled with Kremlin-backed misinformation, particularly regarding the war in Ukraine. Throughout the conversation, Tucker and Witkoff repeatedly ignored facts, choosing instead to trust Putin's version of events over credible intelligence. The interview painted Putin as a misunderstood leader who, according to Witkoff, simply wants peace. This sentiment pushed on platforms like Tucker Carlson platform and Fox News attempts to reshape the perception of Putin's aggression as a reasonable stance. They are whitewashing Putin. And it is aligned with the broader strategy of disinformation and deceiving of American public. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Till next time, and Slava Ukraini!